You know those quiet corners of America where the land stretches out like an old friend's handshake, and folks just want to be left alone with their piece of the world? That's where this story unfolds, deep in the heart of rural Arizona, on a sprawling ranch that's been in one family's hands for generations. It's the kind of place where the sunsets paint the sky in fiery oranges, and the only sounds at night are crickets and the occasional coyote howl. But even in paradise, trouble can sneak in like a snake in the grass. This is the tale of a man named Tom, a rugged 48-year-old rancher who's seen his share of dust storms and hard winters. But nothing prepared him for the day an HOA cop crossed his fence line and turned his world upside down. And let me tell you, the revenge that followed, it was as swift as a summer thunderstorm and twice as brutal. Stick around, because if you've ever loved a dog or hated a nosy enforcer, this one's going to hit home. Ever had someone invade your space and hurt what you hold dear? Yeah, me too. Let's get into it. Tom had built his life on that 50-acre ranch, a haven far from the cookie-cutter suburbs creeping closer every year. He'd inherited it from his grandfather, a W-2 vet who taught him that a man's land is his castle. No fancy gates or manicured lawns here, just rolling hills dotted with cattle, a sturdy barn, and a loyal German shepherd named Rusty who was more family than pet. Rusty was Tom's shadow, always by his side during morning chores, chasing rabbits in the afternoons, and sleeping at the foot of his bed. At 10 years old, the dog had a graying muzzle but the heart of a pup, fiercely protective and gentle as a lamb with Tom's grandkids when they visited. The ranch wasn't part of any HOA. Tom made sure of that when developers started gobbling up nearby land. But the neighboring community, Whispering Pines Estates, was a different story. It was one of those gated enclaves where retirees and young professionals paid premium for peace and security, complete with an HOA that ruled with an iron fist. Their president, a sharp-tongued woman in her 60s named Marlene, classic Karen vibes, with her perfectly coiffed hair and a clipboard always at the ready, had expanded their jurisdiction mentality beyond their borders. And that's where the so-called HOA cop came in. They called him Officer Harlan, but he wasn't a real cop, just a rent-a-security guy hired by the HOA to patrol the estates and enforce rules like a wannabe sheriff. Harlan was in his late 50s, built like a linebacker gone to seed, with a mustache that screamed authority complex and a uniform that looked like it came from a discount store. He'd been known to ticket folks for overgrown weeds or unauthorized bird feeders inside the gates, but lately he'd been venturing out, claiming community safety as his excuse to snoop on adjacent properties. Tom had heard whispers from other ranchers about Harlan's oversteps, shining flashlights into barns at night, or issuing fake citations for nuisance animals. But Tom figured as long as he stayed on his side of the fence, it wouldn't touch him. Boy, was he wrong. One scorching July afternoon, Tom was out mending a section of barbed wire along the property line when he heard Rusty's bark turn from playful to frantic. He dropped his tools and jogged toward the sound, his boots kicking up dust clouds. What he saw made his blood run hot. Harlan, in full uniform, had hopped the fence and was inside Tom's pasture, waving a baton like he owned the place. Rusty was circling him, growling low, hackles raised in defense mode. "Hey, get off my land!" Tom shouted, his voice echoing across the open field. Harlan spun around, his face flushed under the brim of his hat. "This your mutt?" "He's been barking nonstop, disturbing the peace in the estates. I'm just doing my job, teaching him a lesson." Before Tom could close the distance, Harlan swung his baton, catching Rusty square on the flank with a sickening thud. The dog yelped in pain, stumbling back but not retreating, his loyalty overriding the hurt. Tom saw red. He charged forward, grabbing Harlan by the collar. "You just assaulted my dog on my property. You're trespassing." Harlan shoved him off, sneering. "HOA rules extend to adjacent nuisances. That dog's a menace. Consider this a warning." He backed away, hopping the fence with surprising agility for his size, and sped off in his golf cart, emblazoned with the Whispering Pines logo. Tom knelt beside Rusty, who was whimpering softly, a nasty welt already swelling on his side. "Easy, boy, easy," Tom murmured, his hands shaking with rage as he checked for broken bones. Luckily, it seemed like just bruising, but the vet bill would confirm a cracked rib later that evening. As Tom loaded Rusty into his truck for the drive to the animal clinic, he vowed this wouldn't slide. What kind of person hurts an innocent animal just doing its job? If you're a pet owner, you get it. That bond is unbreakable, and messing with it awakens something primal. Back at the ranch that night, Tom paced the creaky wooden floors of his old farmhouse, the screen door banging in the breeze. He'd called the real sheriff's office, but they dismissed it as a civil matter since Harlan wasn't official law enforcement. "File a complaint with the HOA," the deputy suggested, which only fueled Tom's fire. He dug into research on his ancient laptop, the kind with a dial-up hum that reminded him of simpler times. Turns out, Whispering Pines had a history of complaints, overreaching fines, harassment of non-members, even a lawsuit from a farmer whose fence they'd damaged during inspections. Marlene, the HOA president, was at the center of it all, a retired accountant who'd turned her knack for numbers into a weapon for control. Tom posted about the incident on a local Facebook group for ranchers, and the responses flooded in. "That Harlan guy's a bully. Chased my horses once." Marlene's the real problem. She's got the board wrapped around her finger. Emboldened, Tom decided to confront the HOA directly. The next morning, with Rusty bandaged and resting in the shade, Tom drove to the Whispering Pines Community Center, a pristine building with fake adobe walls and a fountain out front. He marched into the monthly board meeting, uninvited but undeterred. The room was filled with residents in polo shirts and khakis, sipping coffee from styrofoam cups. Marlene sat at the head table, gavel in hand, her eyes narrowing as Tom stood up during open comments. "Ladies and gentlemen," Tom began, his voice steady despite the knot in his gut. "Yesterday, your hired security trespassed on my ranch and injured my dog with a baton. This isn't just about property lines. It's assault, plain and simple. I demand accountability." The room murmured, some nodding in sympathy, others shifting uncomfortably. Marlene banged her gavel. "This meeting is for members only. Your ranch isn't under our purview, so take your grievances elsewhere." But Tom wasn't backing down. He pulled out his phone, showing photos of Rusty's injury, the purple bruise stark against his fur. "This happened because your cop thinks he can play judge and jury. If you don't rein him in, I'll make sure the whole county knows about your little empire." Harlan, lurking in the corner, smirked. "The dog was aggressive, self-defense." Tom shot back. "Aggressive? He was on my land." "You're the intruder." The meeting devolved into chaos, with a few residents speaking up. "I've seen Harlan overstep before. Maybe it's time for a change." Marlene adjourned abruptly, but Tom left with a spark of hope. Little did he know, this was just the kindling for a blaze that would consume the entire HOA. Over the next few days, the fallout began to simmer. Tom filed a formal police report, this time with photos and vet records as evidence. The sheriff's office, prodded by Tom's persistence and calls from other locals, finally took it seriously and issued a trespass warning to Harlan. But Marlene wasn't one to let things lie. She retaliated by rallying the board to send Tom a cease and desist letter, claiming his defamatory social media posts were harming the community's reputation. They even threatened a lawsuit for slander. Tom laughed it off at first, but when strange things started happening, fence posts pulled up overnight, cattle spooked by fireworks near the border, he suspected sabotage. One evening, he caught a glimpse of Harlan's golf cart retreating in the dusk. "That's it," Tom muttered to Rusty, who was healing but still limping. He installed trail cameras around the perimeter, the kind hunters use for deer scouting. Sure enough, 2 nights later, the footage captured Harlan sneaking onto the ranch, scattering feed laced with something suspicious. Lab tests later revealed it was a mild irritant meant to sicken the cows. Now Tom had proof of tampering, a felony in livestock country. He shared the video anonymously on that same Facebook group, and it went viral locally, racking up shares from ranchers across Arizona. Comments poured in. "Time to take down these HOA tyrants." "My dog's my best friend. Hurt him and you're done." What would you do with ironclad evidence like that? Tom knew exactly. Escalate. Armed with the video, Tom contacted a lawyer friend from his high school days, a no-nonsense attorney named Sarah who'd handled property disputes for years. "This is gold, Tom," she said over coffee at a diner in town, her eyes lighting up as she watched the footage. "Trespass, animal cruelty, property damage. We can hit them with civil and criminal charges." Together they built a case, gathering affidavits from neighbors who'd suffered similar harassment. One elderly couple from inside Whispering Pines confessed Marlene had fined them $5,000 for a non-compliant mailbox, only to use the money for her own home upgrades. Another resident revealed Harlan's security contract was inflated with kickbacks to Marlene. It smelled like corruption, the kind that thrives in small communities where oversight is lax. Tom also reached out to the state attorney general's office, tipping them off about potential HOA fraud under Arizona's strict governance laws. The AG's investigators were intrigued, especially when Tom provided emails he'd obtained through a public records request. Turns out, Whispering Pines was a non-profit, and their books were fishy. As the net tightened, Marlene and Harlan grew desperate. They tried to intimidate Tom with anonymous calls. "Drop this or it'll get worse." But Tom, with Rusty's head in his lap, just smiled. "They poked the wrong bear," he told his dog. The climax hit like a freight train at the next HOA annual election meeting, held in the community center under fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry bees. Tom, Sarah, and a deputy sheriff showed up, warrants in hand. The room was packed. Word had spread, drawing not just residents but local media with cameras rolling. Marlene opened the meeting with her usual poise, but her hands trembled as she gripped the microphone. "We'll now discuss budget allocations," she started, but Tom stood, holding up a folder thick with documents. "Before that, let's talk about embezzlement and assault." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sarah laid it out methodically. The video of Harlan's sabotage, financial records showing diverted funds, and witness statements painting Marlene as a dictator. Harlan bolted for the door, but the deputy blocked him. "You're under arrest for trespassing, animal cruelty, and tampering with livestock," the officer announced, cuffs clicking into place. Marlene's face crumpled. "This is outrageous. I was protecting our values." But the residents weren't buying it anymore. One by one, they voted to oust her on the spot, electing a new board committed to reform. The AG's office swooped in days later, freezing assets and launching a full audit that uncovered $50,000 in misappropriated funds. Marlene faced charges of fraud and conspiracy, her pristine reputation shattered. Harlan? He lost his license, pled guilty to misdemeanors, and slunk out of town, tail between his legs. In the aftermath, Tom's ranch returned to its peaceful rhythm. Rusty healed fully, chasing squirrels with renewed vigor, and Tom even hosted a barbecue for the reformed HOA neighbors, bridging the divide over grilled steaks and cold beers. The story made headlines in the local paper. Rancher takes down HOA empire after dog attack. It sparked a wave of reforms across Arizona HOAs, with new laws proposed to curb overreach. Tom reflected on it all one evening, sitting on his porch with Rusty at his feet, the stars twinkling overhead. "We showed him, boy. No one messes with family. And that's the beauty of these tales. They remind us that justice, when it comes, can be swift and brutal, especially when you've got right on your side. If this fired you up, think about your own battles. Ever stood up to a bully and won?" Share in the comments. I love hearing from you. Hit like if you're Team Tom and Rusty. Subscribe for more stories of everyday heroes taking on the entitled, and catch my next video on another HOA nightmare. Thanks for joining me. Stay strong out there.